Today we're here to talk about money. No, not that money. This money. Although to be fair, they do have similar backings nowadays. In order for us to be able to understand what money represents, we need to understand what money actually is. The good news is it tells us directly on the bill, saying this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We all now know exactly what money is and understand it perfectly. Except we don't actually, or else these things wouldn't be issues in America. So let's go back now and try to figure out what legal tender actually means. I'll put up the direct definition and a brief summary as well if you care to pause it and get ahead of the class, but it will be explained shortly. I'm going to simplify and explain a concept from one of my favorite economists to help me explain money. His name is Gary Stevenson, and he has a YouTube channel as well that I would highly recommend for anyone interested in the intricacies of economics, and I will leave a link to the video I'm paraphrasing from in the description down below. To begin, we in America have a debt-based monetary system. All money is created from debt, and it all starts with the Federal Reserve System. They create money by lending it to commercial banks, who now owe that money back to the Federal Reserve System. Take extra care to notice here that the debt and the money are created together and exist at the same time, thus canceling each other out. So we know here that the total sum of this debt is zero. $100 was issued, $100 is owed. But what's the actual benefit to doing this? This ends up being the core component of all debt-based societies. So always remember this. Where there is debt, there is interest. If there is no interest, there are fees. And if there are no fees and no interest, the car dealership is lying to you. So with this in mind, understand that when the Federal Reserve issues this $100 bill, it is simply a representation of the credit-debt relationship between the Federal Reserve and the owner of the $100 bill. Now we can get to the fun part. So far we've only talked about debt between these institutions. Now we can explain how these institutions put the individual into debt. For this, I will use an example that Gary uses directly in his video, as well as add onto it and delve deeper into the societal implications of this very debt. Now let's say you borrow $100 from the bank and that loan has a 7% interest. The reason you took out this loan was to pay your babysitter for the week. They receive $100 in payment and are not in debt to you. In this situation, you are shouldering the debt based on the leverage that you are receiving your paycheck in 3 days and will avoid the monthly interest payment. Or at least, that's what you thought you'd do. In reality, they had charged you that 7% immediately upon issuing the loan because it was under $1,000 in value, meaning you pay back $107 to pay off your debts. Now let's rearrange things a little bit so we can get a closer look at why banks take loans to give loans and how it benefits them. As you can see, after loaning out $100, the bank received back $107 due to the interest rate that they charged on the loan. But remember, if there is debt, there is interest, and the bank is still in debt to the Federal Reserve. The interest rate on this loan is set by the Federal Reserve because they are the technical creators of money in America. As of the making of this video, the exact interest rate is 4.33%. So the bank must return the loan amount of $104.33, netting them a profit of $2.67. Now, obviously this is a very brief and extremely simplified explanation of how banks make money and allow money to circulate. But please do understand, banks are not technically a cog in the capitalist machine. They are the privatized grease that allows the Federal Reserve to circulate money all across the nation without having to open 4,000 government-owned and operated locations. Now, after Gary's example that I overly explained, he goes on to say all money is credit, all money is debt, and that it's better to think of money simply as credit, saying, think of it as money that is owed to you by someone. This allows me to confidently say that legal tender is, at its most basic explanation, a promise that the government that represents that coin or bill will accept it as a payment for the debt it is owed. Now, I will briefly go back to my hilarious joke about the US dollar being backed by hopes and dreams, because this is genuinely not a terrible metaphor for how society thinks of money. So let's say we have 5 people, and they are all in the market for 3 different things: gold, oil barrels, and homes. Understand that each of these things in a bartering system are usually worth an equivalent amount to one another in relation. In the last 50 years before the 2020s, 1 gold ounce is usually worth anywhere from 10 to 30 times more than 1 oil barrel. But it does get tricky when deciding how many gold ounces are worth a home. Historically, both prices fluctuate drastically, but since the 60s, the average of all of that has been about 500 ounces of gold will purchase an average home in the US. The reason I find the idea of bartering so entertaining in modern society is this implies you could sell one average home for 15,000 oil barrels, or the opposite, and purchase 15,000 oil barrels slowly to purchase a home outright. Unfortunately, for my sense of humor, we don't live in a bartering society. We live in a debt based economy with internet connection around the world, which simply means that between these items and the purchasers of these items, these five men will have to go through the entire market. That market is made up of literally every single entity in the world that has any form of purchasing power, and thus has a small part in deciding the value of everything available for purchase. So we have the worldwide goods market determining the value of everything through supply and demand. We have the Federal Reserve that does its best to regulate cash and allow it to circulate. And we have a basis that cash, being legal tender, makes it a form of credit. I would also like to add the fact that as a society, we are paid in cash based on work we have completed in pay cycles. Whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, through sales commission, or through direct sales of a business, everyone puts in work and receives credit for the work they've completed. This means you now are in ownership of a physical representation of the value that you have previously contributed to society and are able to use that for purchase. And all of that is said just to support the fact that all money is credit. You did something, so you are owed. You have credit worth the money you've received. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what money is actually meant to be. It's not a representation of your worth as a person, or even an accurate representation of the work you've done. It's simply a societal agreement between everyone that having a dollar bill means you are owed something. And I know there is a whole slew of more in-depth concepts to explain in every single one of these ideas, but I hope this allowed you a better understanding of what money is, why it works the way it works in our society, and how people often misunderstand it altogether. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it sincerely if you would like, leave a comment, and subscribe. If this piqued your interest and you want to dive deeper into some of these concepts, I'll remind you again that the link to Gary's video is in the description down below. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.